Hi friends, David here from Learn Christmas Lighting, and in this video we want to look and compare the Dominar X to some other similar models on the market and kind of show you and give you the resources to understand what makes the Dominar X different, even if it looks very similar to other fixtures that have come onto the market after it. And truth be told, we knew this was going to happen. And I'm not surprised. Not that I know what vendor was going to come out with an identical looking model, and identical looking is the key. But we knew going into this that there'd be people finding fixtures that look like this elsewhere. Why? Okay. So to get into that and kind of as a base level for starting to compare how the Dominar X compares to these other fixtures, let's talk about China. Unless you're buying something from a really high-end brand and a pretty high-end fixture, most moving headlights are made in China. Okay, that's fine. It's just like pixels, right? This is where these things are made. It's totally fine. Outside of that, there are a few higher-end brands in the stage lighting industry that do build outside of China. To my knowledge, though, nobody currently builds from top to bottom moving heads in the United States. It just doesn't happen. We don't have the workforce to do it. We don't have the capability, and quite frankly, the people in China are better at it. Okay, there are some factories that are in other countries like Vietnam, etc., but most of the moving heads in the US do come from China, and that's fine. But one of the things about China is that copyright and the way that they use copyright and things like that is a lot different culturally than what we have here in the US. And so what you see basically in the moving head market, and we've seen this for years, is you may have a model like this, that one company goes and develops, and they go get the molds from a popular mold company to make all the plastics and stuff, and then ultimately there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other small factories that just plain copy it. Piece for piece, copy it. The way things often also work in China is that one city builds most of the moving heads, one or two cities. And so the people actually go from factory to factory and they work in different factories all the time. They switch jobs. And so you essentially get the same workforce at different factories. And if you go, for example, to a show like the Get Show in China, which is a trade show for moving heads and DMX lights, what you'll see is literally, you'll see the same kind of light, whether it's this type of light or another moving head or a washed par type fixture, and you'll literally see lights that look identical in hundreds of different booths, okay? And so that begs the question, are they actually identical? And feature set for feature set, oftentimes they can go, okay, they have the same degrees of pan, they have the same degrees of tilt, they claim similar wattages and similar amounts of power draw. They're going to claim the same amount of gobos, colors. They're basically going to claim all the same features. So what's the difference between a factory that might charge, half for a light compared to another factory that's going to charge more for the same light? And that's going to come down to build quality. And that's the biggest thing. What components are they using on the inside? Because unfortunately, as we know in the pixel world, the Chinese market believes that the rest of the world, including the US, they always fall back on this, probably because we taught them like in the early 90s and stuff. They constantly believe that we want the very cheapest thing possible. So their default go-to is to put the very cheapest parts into a light. No matter what some companies marketing here in the US that's selling moving heads says, if they're just going to a factory asking for a light and saying nothing else, they're going to get the cheapest of the cheap parts that just plain aren't going to last. Not only that, but even if with moving heads, and we as a vendor have been selling moving heads for, we're one of the ones that have been around longer than most of the people that are popping out selling moving heads all of a sudden, right? So, there's one brand in particular that has a moving head that looks a lot like this here in 2024, but there's going to be more. Even if you say, hey, this is the specs, this is what we want, sign on it, send the money over, we want these higher quality parts in it, guess what? About half the time, they're going to try to sneak in the lower quality parts and get away with it. So how do you get around that, right? We often know with pixel vendors in this industry, they pay independent representatives to go to the factory, make sure that the epoxies and things are getting mixed correctly, maybe using parts that are unique to them so they can check them when they get them in the US, etc. In moving heads, to my knowledge, we're the only Christmas light vendor doing this where we have an independent representative. Our team has been working with these representatives, we have a few of them, for 10 to 15 years, depending on who goes over there, okay? And these people go to that factory, which by the way is a factory that we've been working with for over 15 years, and they check everything before the lights leave the factory. They check all the internal components, they make sure everything that we've upgraded inside of the Dominar X is actually upgraded. And they check all of those things. And that's part of the difference you're gonna get with the Dominar B. Other vendors that are selling these, I'm gonna tell you, they're not doing this. They're trusting the factory. You know, the factory's gonna say, hey, yeah, we did this, blah, blah, blah. But did they really? You don't know. So what happens next? The lights come across the sea to the US, right? They come via one of two ways. They may come from container, which is the safest way for moving heads, or they may also come over through air freight via DHL, which tends to have a higher chance of things getting damaged, especially when you have a product with lots of moving parts, such as a moving head. What happens with most vendors in this industry is they're going to take it out of the container. By the way, we only ship full containers. So that means everything in that container is ours. It's cleared for customs. All the paperwork's in order because we're shipping full containers at a time, which other vendors aren't doing. But whether it comes via container or it comes via air freight, generally we do container, but there are times we do air freight. You can't trust that by the time it comes across the sea, gets to the US, that you could just ship it off to a customer. In the professional stage lighting market where we come from, that plane just doesn't happen. If you do that, there's gonna be problems with fixtures. It's just part of the game. These things have moving parts, it happens, okay? So what we do that's different, again, part of the Dominar difference, is every fixture is pulled out of the box. We hook it up to DMX, we check every feature inside that light, and we let them run for 8 hours or so. If any of them have issues, we have certified repair techs that can bring these things up to new for us before they leave. So you know that when you get a Dominar X, it's gonna be perfect when it comes to you. And if it's not, then that shipping damage happened here on US soil, and we'll take care of it right away. It's what we do. We have techs in the US who are contracted just to us to repair these fixtures, okay? Your other vendors, they're not gonna do that. You know, next thing is cables, plugs, etc. So the Dominar X, what we did, which is a little bit different, and I'm sure the other vendors are gonna copy it, is when you go to China and you get a waterproof fixture, they're gonna send it with this plug. Now, this plug on it, and the Dominar X's plug, which is over here somewhere, here it is, which is this plug, they do look awfully similar, but they're actually not. This is a true one connector, and this is what's called a waterproof power con. It's, if you're familiar with the stage lighting industry, actually, I'll find one here. It's the same as this blue plug, it's just yellow, and it's more waterproof. Now, how does that matter in the day-to-day? There's two big reasons why you don't want the waterproof power con, you want the true one plug that comes on the Dominar X. Number one is that the true one plugs actually plug together. So here, for example, I have a jumper, oops, with the DMX cable all surrounding it. And just like a regular Edison plug, the plug that's on your house, on your wall outlets that you use for plugging things in here in the US, these plug together, which means I can extend multiple of these cords together to get more length. With a waterproof power con, that doesn't happen. And so that's a big deal. The other big deal is True One plugs are easy. Piece of cake to buy in the US. You can get True One cables all day long. And of course, with the bundles of the Dominar X, the 2-pack, 4-pack, and 8-pack, we include 10-foot jumpers for both the waterproof DMX, which we'll talk about in a minute, and the waterproof True One, and we have the rest for sale on our store, okay? If your vendor's selling moving heads and they can't even sell you, they don't have on their store the extensions, then they probably shouldn't be selling moving heads. If you're gonna sell a product, you have to sell the accessories that go with it. It's kind of ridiculous if you don't. All that to say, you really do want the real True One plug because you can get the cables you need, and with the Dominar X, we include them, which again, no other vendors at this time are doing, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Same with the waterproof DMX. They're a little easier to get in the US. They're pretty universal across brands. They can plug to a regular DMX, but if you're gonna be leaving these things outside and you're gonna be connecting them up, you need to keep their waterproof nature intact. You need to use the proper cables. And if somebody's selling you a 2-pack of fixtures that look kind of like this, and they're not selling you extension cables to actually get you reasonable lengths between the fixtures, then again, they probably shouldn't be selling moving. That's my opinion, right? The next thing that makes the Dominar X different and Dominar is that we have a real warranty on these things. If anyone in the stage light industry sells you a moving head and they put an hours cap on that warranty, they say, hey, this many years or this many hours. I'm just gonna be honest with you, that's a bunch of bad stuff, AKA BS, right? Like, if it's truly a quality product and that vendor's claiming it's quality, then, and it's an LED source fixture especially, there is zero need for there to be an hours cap on it, okay? That's ridiculous, okay? We offer a real warranty with every Dominar product. There's never gonna be an hours cap, never gonna be an issue with it being in commercial use. We're gonna cover it, okay? If somebody puts a residential use only disclaimer on their warranty or an hours cap, like, I would just run away. That's my opinion, because they either don't have any faith in their product quality, or they don't know enough about moving heads to actually warranty it. So that's like a huge red flag in my book. Okay, what about specifications? So we're seeing other models on the market, you know, from another vendor here in the US, but also you can find models that look like this on AliExpress, on Alibaba. In fact, I've seen people buy them, then get them, sell them, and buy the Dominar X. We actually had that happen, okay? Which tells you that if you go buy a random fixture off Alibaba from a random factory, your chances of getting something that's the same quality level as this are like really low. The chance of getting something good that you want is like really low. Just be aware of that. There's a reason why we've been selling moving heads for over 3 years and we're still in the game. In that time, we've watched countless vendors start selling moving heads and then stop. Selling, stop, selling, stop. We've been selling the whole time. Why? Because we know what we're doing. We get you the right thing. Not only that, but we lead the industry in giving you instructions on our resources page, our Dominar Resources. We'll link it below. By providing those X-Lights custom models, by providing the tutorials on what to do, and actually being able to fulfill to you all of the things you need in order to have a working system out of your lights. All that to say, oh, I was getting to specs. When you look at the market, there's gonna be companies that come up, and there's one now that has a really similar model to ours. And their pre-sale pricing, I'm just gonna tell you, is nuts. Like, we can't hit that with this quality of a fixture and be open to support people in the proper way. But if you look at the normal pricing, look between them, you'll see there's not a lot of difference. Now, let's talk about specs, okay? There's somebody else right now who has these out, and they're rated at 350 watts. I can tell you, they grabbed that spec straight from a factory manual. Why? Because I've been working with factories, and our team's been working with them and moving heads for a long time. And I'll be the first to tell you that when you take moving heads from a factory, especially LED source ones, there's going to be a wattage of the LED, and they just tack on 50 or 100 watts for the total wattage. If you're truly being a moving head vendor and doing your due diligence, I can in good faith publish that number and just tell people, hey, this is the wattage. Like, that's ridiculous. So instead, we take batches of units, we check them all, we actually meter the power and calculate the amperage. Why? Because with LEDs, there's a couple things that go on. One is the LED engines that are in the backside of these things, they have a certain wattage to them. They're often kind of undervolted a little. They don't run them at their full power because it helps the LEDs to cool correctly and helps give them that long 20 to 50,000 hour life that everybody talks about. Okay, this is very normative across the LED industry over lots of time. It's always been this way. It's just fairly inherent to LEDs themselves. What that means is that, and they're also at a lower voltage, right, than 120 volts. So they're not running at 120 volts. So if it's a 250 watt source, but it's not running at 120 volts, that means that when I plug into this, and I meter the power with my true RMS clamp meter, which is calibrated. It's, you know, true RMS. It's going to give me an accurate reading. That means it's not going to actually pull 250 watts, okay? Now, in the Dominar X manual, just like all of our other fixtures, we actually meter and test and find the max power draw of these fixtures. We have another vendor out there, right, who has a similar model, and they're saying, don't put more than 4 on a circuit, I believe is what they're saying. Okay, based on a 350 watt value. Well, I'm going to tell you, you're wasting your money on having an electrician come out if you listen to that number. I mean, maybe theirs draws that much and it's really inefficient. I can tell you I've seen it next to this one and it's about the same brightness. We've metered it and we're at 171 watts max, okay? We calculated that, we measured it, and we've checked it over and over again. Okay, why? Because again, we know what we're doing. So if we take a 20 amp circuit and we use the 80% rule, no more than 80% capacity, that's 2,000 watts. We divide that by 171 watts, the max wattage of a single Dominar X, and we get ourselves that we could actually put 11 fixtures on a 20 amp circuit. Now, a lot of people have 15 amp circuits, that's fine, so that's 1,800 watts. 80% of that's 1,440. Divide that by 171 is over 8 fixtures that you could put on a single dedicated circuit. No other fixture on the market is claiming these same efficiencies. Whether they have it or not, I don't know, because it seems to me that the vendors haven't actually tested their product and vetted it. And that's what's going to happen if you buy from a factory or you buy from a vendor who hasn't taken the time to do this diligence. And so I love these people. I love my other vendors in the market. I think they're awesome. But there's a reason why so many vendors over the years have, started selling moving lights and disappeared. Started selling and disappeared. Year after year after year. Every year we've been at Transworld, there's been a different vendor with new moving heads. And up through this past year, 3 years of Transworld, every year there's been somebody selling moving heads and they're not back in the next year with those models. And that's been the difference with us and the Dominar models. They don't go away. Why? Because instead of coming up with a model from a factory, selling it to a bunch of people, and then stopping because we realize it's not a good fixture, we actually get you good stuff. And we vet them on the forefront, on the front end. We put our money into it, not yours. We make sure we've got a solid fixture. We do, at the minimum, a few months of testing, not days, before we bring things to market. And we have our repair techs take them apart. We have our independent representative check them on the factory. We use factories and reps that we've used for years. All of this comes together to give you what's going to be the best moving head on the market. And price-wise, it's not that much more or different than the people that are coming out with fixtures that look a lot like this. So if you're looking for moving heads, if you're considering the Dominar X, comparing it to maybe a bird that has rays shooting out of it or something like that, these are just a few things, just 20 minutes of your time to consider, to look at, to think about when you're comparing models on the market. Because other people may use flashy marketing and may use a lot of terminology, but I'm going to tell you, I just checked their specs page again and they fixed some of their stuff, but there's stuff that's just blatantly wrong on there. And if you're buying from someone who doesn't do the same due diligence as we do, then you're not getting as good of a fixture. So remember that when you purchase, and then check out the Dominar beams below. We've got the Dominar X's. They're over at our store, which is now at Learn Stage Lighting Gear. Our entire Christmas store is there by Above AVL. Still the same people, just on a new site so that we can serve you the best we possibly can. Thank you so much for watching. And again, the Dominar X's will be in stock very soon from our initial pre-order. So we're going to have them in stock, ready to ship when you purchase. And we're going to be able to provide that for you, provide the support on the back end, and provide you a really high quality, lightweight, easy to use product so that you can go and make an epic Christmas light show. If that sounds good, then check them out below and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.